Hi again. So the Exordium starting area is now available to players. The patch notes dropped today. I thought I'd just quickly sum them up with my Exordium to Exordium. If you didn't know, Exordium apparently means introduction. So the key things to take away from this patch is that Exordium has been introduced. It's 53 new systems. First time they've added systems to EVE since, gosh, maybe the Wormhole. Yeah, maybe the Wormhole update. They'll be split between Air and Concord, taking the majority of them, and the rest being split between the four empires. Manifest will be at the heart of the region. Manifest is sort of the trade hub system. It's also the system that's going to link Exordium back to the rest of New Eden through Yulai. It's heralding the introduction of a new 1.0 security class system where your safety is locked to green and theoretically you can't shoot anyone. All the other systems in the game that were 1.0 have now been bumped down to 0.9. There are going to be economic sanctions in place to reduce the attractiveness of the space long term, so people aren't going to want to stay there forever. The region will also contain only low quality grade 0 ores, which are 50% compared to normal ores, as well as limited hacking and data sites. There is currently a day one exploit where friendly fire and killing people is possible. We don't know if it's going to stay around, but essentially you can friendly fire people within corpse because it doesn't trigger any sort of yellow timer, and you can do it with your green safety on. Okay, just quickly, we've got the layout of Exordium here. We've got the Caldari area up here. Let me just get a nice. There we go. Got the Caldaria area up here, so it's not many systems. Galente, Amar, and Mimitar. Now, you'll have the ability to join any of the faction warfares from their respective areas, depending on what race you choose when you spawn. That'll tell you where you end up to begin with. The system that is probably the one that's going to be the most important is Manifest, the one right in the center here. So Manifest is where the trading station will be, so the main market station. It's not too far from any of the other systems, it's very central, but it's also where the gate to Yulai will be, so this is how you'll get into the rest of New Eden. I'm going to go through the other key parts of the update into a little bit more depth. So first thing to look at is the new 1.0 security. So these are just straight from the patch notes. Safety settings are going to be permanently locked to green whilst you're in there. War declarations and factional warfare are completely disabled, so you can't shoot at each other, and you can't because you're in faction warfare, and you can't shoot each other if you're in war. You cannot initiate duels. Kill rights can't be activated. Characters with combat flags aren't able to enter Exordium or undock if somehow you manage to get inside of Exordium. I can't really think of any way that you could get in there, but if you can, please tell me below. The key is that players can't freely attack each other, with that one exception, as mentioned before, that if you are in a friendly fire corp, you can shoot each other. Again, we'll see how long that lasts. Upwell structures can't be deployed, which is no shock. And deployables can't be anchored, which should mean at least there'll be less sort of like space trash. But I've always found those somewhat interesting, at least as corp adverts. So I suppose people just have to make sure that they're being signposted to the corp adverts within sort of the neocom. With all of the safety features locked into Exordium, they want to make sure, FC want to make sure that it doesn't just become the industrial hub of New Eden, so there are some negatives to dissuade that. Missions are locked at level 1 and level 2. LPs are reduced, as are the missionists, and NPC bounties are all down, so the already pitiful bounties that you'd be finding are even lower. There's going to be an additional fee on non-instant orders, so that means that if you aren't selling something to someone directly, for like a standing buy order, you will have to pay an extra 5% just for the privilege of selling it and waiting. Also, industry installation fees are going to be increased by 5%, as are all of the other research things like invention, time efficiency, and material efficiency. So not too many benefits to staying in this for any longer than you need to just to learn the game, but you can still play pretty much a lot of the early levels. And then you've got the hacking and mining, and also quick mention of abyssal filaments. So with the ores though, they're all going to be grade 0, which means they have 50% the mineral yield compared to any other standard variant. So just by leaving Exordium, you're going to be doubling the amount of money you can make. Supposedly there's also going to be limits so that only ventures and corvettes can warp into certain mining sites or mining anomalies within Exordium. Exploration sites are also going to have their own loot tables, again with things specialized for newer players. So I'm not sure what they mean by that. It could just mean that there's it's going to lock out certain equipment that they just wouldn't be able to use. And I thought this would be a worry, but they have addressed homefront operations. They're also going to be easier, as well as having reduced rewards. So that means that those early players, those young players, are going to be able to have a go at the homefront operations, but they're not going to be rewarded enough that other players who currently sort of like farm them are going to come in and steal them from them. Interesting thing though, tier 0 abyssal filaments will be usable here, so that's interesting. You can't make a lot of money from them, but they're at least a good early level way of learning sort of more higher level PvE and some PvP mechanics, and dipping your toe in what the abyssal filaments are. So that's cool, that's all interesting. Ultimately this is so that we can hopefully see a new uptake in players. This game lives and dies by having people to fly with, so they've looked at introducing essentially some sort of like tutorial island. It'll be interesting to see whether or not that has a positive impact on pilot retention, and to see what kind of pilots this will produce. It'll be interesting to see if they're resilient pilots able to deal with the challenges of New Eden outside of Exordium. Will they be able to deal with moving into Yulai and potentially immediately getting ganked or losing everything in their Galente tier 1 industrial that they've thrown all of their life into, and people just blow up for the sake of it? What will that be will that kill the interest in the game for them? Will there be sanctions against people who do that? It'll be interesting as well to see how they address things like cognitive load, so how much people are being overwhelmed with information-wise before they are just sort of like shut off during a one play session. And I think my own last opinion is just, why would anyone, after talking to anyone, stay in these systems when you could just earn twice as much money anywhere else, but there's a slight chance of ganking if you're doing mining? If you're doing anything else, there's not really much of a risk. That's just my sort of thought. It's a good thing, it's a positive step, but I wonder how long people will be staying in Exordium. It'll be interesting to see the stats if they release those and what they look like. So anyway, thank you so much for your time today. Have a lovely rest of your day, and I shall talk to you when I next get a chance.